Hi, it's Mark from Top Local. I'm here with Bernie Pawlik, Pawlik Automotive in Vancouver, Vancouver's best auto service experience, Vancouver, BC, Canada. And of course, 23-time winners of best auto repair in Vancouver as voted by their customers. Not making that up, 23 times. Bernie, we're talking cars. How are you doing?
Doing very well.
So today's victim is an old one, a 1992 VW Transporter that had a bit of a ring gear problem. What was going on with this vehicle?
Yeah, so this vehicle came to our shop. The owner had complained that the starter wouldn't engage. It would just make a grinding sound when he went to start it, and he'd replace the starter. It's a bit of a do-it-yourselfer. He replaced the starter many times and basically had found the ring gear was worn out.
So what testing and inspections did you do? How did this show up?
The vehicle was towed to our shop. So, and as I said, the owner had done a lot of his own work on it. He said, look, the ring gear is worn out. So we put it up on a hoist and just visually verified that, in fact, the teeth on the ring gear were worn out and it needed to be replaced. So pretty simple on that end.
So how did the starter and ring gear work together?
Well, basically, the ring gear is a very large, it's a ring gear, very large diameter, generally a foot or two in diameter, depending on the size of the engine. Well, 2 feet maybe on a large diesel, but usually a foot and a half in diameter, big ring that bolts onto the back of the engine. Sometimes it's part of the torque converter for the transmission or the flywheel. And the starter motor has a very small little gear that engages into that ring gear. So when you turn the key to start, the starter motor, there's a plunger that moves a small gear into the ring gear, and the starter motor turns, rotates the engine. So that's basically how the whole system works. Then, of course, when you let the key back off, it all retracts and the engine started running, hopefully, if everything works like it normally does. So that's kind of how it works. Now, of course, as this gear meshes in and out all the time, eventually there's a little tiny bit of wear. And sometimes over the years, it's a 92, so getting pretty old. There's been a lot of years of the gear meshing together and it basically wears the teeth out.
So I guess sometimes these are incorporated into, they're not separate. Is it a separate piece on the VW?
It is. Now, yeah, on this one, it's actually part of the torque converter. So the transmission has to come out to replace it. It actually has to come out on pretty well every vehicle. I can think of one vehicle where you don't, but we won't talk about that right now. But 99.9% of any vehicle on the road, if your ring gear goes bad, either the engine or transmission has to be removed to replace it. So, and in this case, the ring gear is incorporated in the torque converter. So let's look at some pictures. So there is our worn out ring gear. If you can see these teeth, we'll be looking at some good ones in a while, but you can see these teeth along here, like someone's hammered them flat compared to these nice looking teeth down here. So the interesting thing with ring gear wear is it doesn't wear the whole gear. It only usually wears 1 or 2 spots, because when an engine stops, it almost always stops in the same spot, 1 of 2 spots. So it seems to engage in the same area and it'll just wear that spot out. If it stopped in a different place every time, it'd be kind of a different ball of wax. This is the torque converter removed. Again, you can see the ring gear. And if you look around this area in sort of the bottom left here, you can see these teeth look a little less, quite a bit worn compared to these teeth at the bottom and around the side. This is a view of the ring gear when it was actually in the vehicle. So this is where the starter bolts in. That yellow arrow points to the starter drive bushing. This is something that does need to be replaced from time to time when you do the starter, usually. And you can see again, the red arrow points to a worn out tooth on the ring gear. Now we'll look at the new piece. You can see the teeth, not only is it nicely painted blue, but the teeth are very much in good shape. So when they replace this torque converter, they actually weld a new ring gear on, and there's a bigger view of the torque converter. Again, you can see all the teeth look to be very tall, nothing pounded down, so works much better that way.
So you're replacing the torque converter as well as the ring gear. Do they go around the same time, or?
They're actually welded together as an assembly. So a couple of things happen with ring gears. Sometimes you get a thing called a flex plate, and it's basically a plate that bolts up to the crankshaft of the engine. It's kind of a thin metal plate, thinnish compared to relative term, I guess. It's a thin metal plate with the ring gear attached to the outside. It's kind of all formed together, welded together. And then the torque converter bolts onto that. Some engines like this one, the ring gear is actually bolted to the torque converter. And if you have a standard transmission with a clutch, usually the ring gear is incorporated into the flywheel, which is a much more massive object than a flex plate. So it depends on the kind of transmission, but it's always either the torque converter, the flywheel, or the flex plate.
So this geared situation with the small gear on the starter, the big ring gear, is that a typical design? Do all vehicles use this kind of design of starter motor ring gear?
Well, they do unless it's a hybrid. So if you have like a Toyota Prius or, I'm just using that as an example, but a lot of hybrids, the motor generator unit actually will start the engine. So when it's commanded, it'll be spinning. It serves as the starter motor and the generator, kind of incorporates several items into one. And so that eliminates the ring gear, the starter. There's also some GM vehicles it's called a mild hybrid. It's like a 48-volt system. And it would actually use a starter and alternator they become one unit, and that'll actually start the motor that uses a very robust drive belt system. So again, that eliminates the ring gear and starter, but any other internal combustion engine uses this system. I guess as time goes by with hybrids, it's getting less common.
So how common of a repair is this on VW transporter vans or on any vehicle?
We do them from time to time. I mean, I could say probably we might do a couple a year, and we do a lot of cars at our shop. So it's not a really common repair, but it does happen from time to time. I guess the next question, how do you know your ring gear is bad? Well, in this case, the starter wouldn't turn anymore, but usually you can tell when your ring gear is going, because when you turn your key to start, it'll make like a loud kind of clanging sound, like a cling, instead of the engine actually cranking over normally. So if that's happening, your ring gear is probably, I mean, sometimes it can just be the starter drive gear that's bad, but that's usually indicating your ring gear is on its way out. And actually, if you do get any noises like that, it's probably good to inspect it and change the starter right away, because you might prevent ring gear damage, because the starter is much cheaper than replacing the ring gear.
So how are these vans for reliability?
Well, they're getting awfully old now. In their day, they were pretty good. I mean, they're a step up from, I like them a lot better than the rear engine vans in many ways. They're much more reliable than the rear engine vans. But again, this is almost a 30-year-old van now, so things are going to be happening, and yeah, what can you say? They're getting old. You'll be doing repairs.
It's nearing the eventual inevitable end.
It is, but it's funny how a lot of old VW vans are still around, and I mean, they're worth a fortune now compared to what they used to be. For some reason, VW vans have had a very long lifespan for some reason. Now, again, these transporters are a little more mainstream because they're front-wheel drive, but yeah, the old, a lot of them seem to last longer than your usual on-the-road vehicle. So we'll probably see a few of these for years to come.
How expensive a repair was this?
At least $2,000 Canadian. I can't remember the exact thing. It's at least 2,000. A lot. The torque converter is not insanely expensive, but there's a lot of labor involved to pull the transmission out. It's really shoehorned in there. Not a lot of fun to remove and reinstall. So mostly labor, but some parts.
If you're looking for good, reliable service, honest service for your vehicle in Vancouver, the guys to call, Pawlik Automotive, 604-327-7112 to book your appointment. You have to call and book ahead in Vancouver, BC, Canada. We love you calling from other places, but we can't help you over the phone. It's in person. This is real world stuff. Check out the website, pawlikautomotive.com. Hundreds of videos on there, all makes, models, types of repairs. We've been doing this for 9 years now. And of course, the YouTube channel, Pawlik Auto Repair. We really appreciate you listening and watching the podcast. Leave us a review if you like what we're doing. Thanks, Bernie.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks for watching. It's always fun.